So we need to review. We are going to have a quiz on sentence structure tomorrow. So we're going to review it in preparation for the quiz. So again, you have a simple sentence. That's just your basic single subject verb independent clause. If you have a compound, then you have more than one simple sentence put together with either a semicolon or a comma and a coordinated conjunction. If you have a complex, then you have a simple sentence, but inside of it is a dependent clause. So that's complex. And then compound complex means you have two independent clauses, but there's also a dependent clause in there somewhere. Okay. Who shall ascend into the hills of the Lord, or who shall stand in his holy place? Compound. Yes, we have two. So your clue here is if you've got a comma with a coordinated conjunction, look before it and after it. Do you have a complete thought? Who shall ascend into the hill of the Lord? Question mark. Is that like an H? Nope, I spelled it right. That's a complete thought. Who shall stand in his holy place? Complete thought. So this one is compound because you have two independent sentences. There are no dependent clauses in here. The very hairs of your head are numbered. So you have your verb, are numbered, hairs, so subject, verb, that's it. This one's simple. He that gathereth in summer is a wise son, but he that sleepeth in harvest is a son that causeth shame. Okay, so we have what's your first main sentence? Okay, so we've got he that gathereth in summer is a wise son. So what's my verb? Is. My subject is he. And then I've got this clause describing he. So I have an adjective clause. This is dependent. Therefore, I have at least, a complex. And then I have a comma with a coordinating conjunction. And again, I have he is. And he that sleepeth in harvest is dependent, and that causeth shame. So this is quite compound complex. So compound complex, there's a lot going on here. Okay, except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that built it. So what's our main sentence here? They labor.
Oh, it's compound.
So we have, it's complex. We have a adverb clause here. Except the Lord, because you've got a subject and a verb. Except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that built it. Build it. And then you have another one. So this one is complex, but there is only one main sentence here. All right. Man looketh on the outward appearance, but the Lord looketh on the heart. So we've got subject verb, man looketh on the outward appearance, just a prepositional phrase, no clause. We have a comma and a coordinating conjunction, and the Lord looketh, again, just a prepositional phrase, no dependent clauses, so this is compound. Number 6, lying lips are an abomination to the Lord, but they that deal truly are his delight. It's compound, so lips are, they are. Do we see any dependent clauses in this? That deal truly is an adjective clause describing they. So we have compound complex. Not easy. So look for the comma and the coordinating conjunctions or the semicolons, and you've got most likely, be careful, because sometimes coordinating conjunctions are subordinating conjunctions, which means they're introducing adverb clauses. But this is not that. Our greatest glory consists not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall. So what's our main sentence? Glory consists, right? Our glory consists in not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall. So where is our dependent clause? Every time that we fall, right? So we've got it right here because there's an understood that. And there's our dependent. So there's our dependent clause. So remember, there could be an understood that. So this is complex. It's not compound. Simply because after the comma, the but and rising every time, that's not a complete thought. There's no.
I know the next one.
Okay, what is the next? The next one is compound, right? Man is strong. So that's a predicate adjective. Semicolon. Again, that's your other clue that you have a compound sentence. Yea, a man of knowledge increaseth strength. So of knowledge, just a prepositional phrase. We don't have any dependent clauses here. So this is compound. We got this. We got this. Okay. Let me just check something really quick. All right, so that takes care of grammar. That section 7 sentence structure is on pages 34 through 36. If you wanted to review that and look at some other examples, maybe put those examples in your notes to have, because you can use notes during the quiz. But other than that, that's it. All right, so I want to read through the literature. It's only 2 pages, so we're going to do it in class, but I want to talk about the writing assignment. So let me go back to, oh my goodness, let me go back to my video here. Maybe. All right. And share screen with the right assignment here. All right, I gave y'all, already given y'all this. Right, hopefully this is sharing properly with the video. You have a writing assignment. We'll get to that in a second. The questions we're gonna do, whatever from these we can do during class, which we actually have plenty of time, so we might be able to finish it. So go to page 215 and 216. And actually, I'm going to pause this while we read, and then we'll discuss. All right. So according to Emerson, is believing in oneself innate, or does it have to be learned? Okay. It is innate. What does that mean? So it's natural. It comes naturally. All right. What does Emerson suggest regarding nonconformity? Yeah, so if you want to be a strong man, a strong person, to be a real man, one must be a nonconformist. So he said, whoso would be a man must be a nonconformist. He who would gather immortal palms must not be hindered by the name of goodness, but must explore if it be goodness. All right, so or suggests to be a real man, you must be a nonconformist. Just like that works. Okay. Oh, I see what I did. I don't know. There we go. Okay, what does he say about good and bad? There's a lot going on here.
They're just like, they change definition depending on. So people are like, what's for them is good and what against them is bad.
Right. So he said, good and bad are just names. Right. So, and would you say they change based on the person? Yeah. So they're not, there's no absolutes there. And so how does he define what is good? Let's see, he says, good and bad are but names, very readily transferable to this or that. The only right is what is after my constitution. The only wrong, what is against it. So something is good based on if it's good for him, right? So if it's good for me, then it's good. So good is only what he feels within him to be good. So, Abigail, love your car, lots of fun. I like cars that go vroom, right? If I decide that it is good for me to have your car, right? That's a ridiculous example, but it is essentially what he's saying. Like, it is good for me to have that. Therefore, I'm going to take it because I can, if I have the power to do so. So he's saying that that's good. And so of course, a lot of this becomes ridiculous. In arguments, it becomes a little bit silly because people make an argument like that. And it's like, so obviously what's good for me may not be good for you. Right. But again, this comes down to the basis of man is inherently good. So I would never consider, he's saying in this world, I would never consider taking something that belongs to you from you. So that's not even an option because I'm inherently good. And if I have reached that level of goodness, of divinity, or of, awareness of myself and nature, that would never even be an option. But anyone who's had children knows that man is not inherently good, because good Lord. Okay, so, okay, the last part of this, how absolute is this definition? So it's literally, there's no absolute, because my good is my good, your good is your good. So no one's is absolutely true for everyone, I guess, is essentially. And because we often change our minds, right? And it depends based on the person. But even on the individual person, it depends. Okay. Next one, what does he say about chance and fortune? Say what? Work it to your own advantage? Yeah. So use, let me find it. So use all that is called fortune. Most men gamble with her and gain all and lose all as her wheel rolls. But do thou leave as unlawful these winnings and deal with cause and effect, the chancellors of God. In the will work and acquire, and thou hast changed the will of chance and shall sit hereafter out of fear from her rotations. Okay, so that the wording of that is really odd compared to how we talk. But what he's saying is that you can control chance and fortune based on your will and how much work you put into something. So, man can control chance or fortune through hard work and strong will, I guess would be a succinct way to put it. Right, you make it work for you. All right, and then number 5, according to Emerson, what is the only thing that can bring peace? I'm sorry, what'd you say? The triumph of principle. So what does that mean? So the only thing that can bring peace to oneself is oneself and the triumph of principles. So this means triumph of principles would mean like maybe self-control, like that you have won and you are living, like you're living according to your principles of being one with nature, being your perfect self sort of thing. So, so I would say peace can only be found within one's self. Through the triumph. IUMP. Okay. All right. So the last part of this applies directly to your essay portion. Neaten this up a little bit. It's driving me crazy. There we go. Okay. So let's go back through these. And this is an opinion piece, right? So as Christians, we can see that there are obvious conflicts between what we believe and what Emerson is talking about. And considering Emerson, pretty much when he came out and started writing about this, he said, write your own Bible. And so that's what he did. So he's trying to replace the word of God with the word of man as a guide to live by, which is essentially how we think of the word of God, right? That is how we should live our lives as Christians. His book is How I Should Live My Life as a Transcendentalist. And so what the writing assignment is in your opinion, do you agree or disagree with the philosophies of Emerson that state each person must be a completely independent individual and listen only to his intuitive counsel? Now, going back to these, are there some of these concepts that you don't necessarily disagree with? Because I feel like there are definitely some. I agree with being a nonconformist because that's something I struggle with. I innately will start to model the behaviors and thoughts and beliefs of the people around me. And I consider that very much a weakness, because if I'm around the wrong, I am by far the definition of someone who must choose their friends wisely, because I will become whoever I hang around with. And I've always hated that about myself, or seen that as a weakness, and worked on not being that way. And I've always admired, say, in my husband, it doesn't matter who he's hanging around, he is himself. He doesn't care what anybody thinks about it. He doesn't care if anybody disagrees about it. He doesn't care if anybody talks to him. Like, he's like, this is what I believe. This is who I am. Love it or leave it. So, to me, he's very much a nonconformist. So there are certainly some of these where that makes sense. But what you want to write about, if you want to talk about nonconformist as maybe one of your examples about that part of his philosophy, then maybe you could discuss the fact that it does depend on where you are, right? Because we want to conform to a Christ-like image. We do not want to conform to a world image. Maybe you could talk about that. What about believing in oneself? Again, it has its place, right? I do not believe it's innate, because I know for a long time, it took me a very long time to begin to trust my instincts. That's how I always thought about it. So I had to learn to trust my instincts. To me, it wasn't necessarily innate. To others, I feel like it is. So again, like, this is an opinion piece. So you want to look back and say, do I agree or do I disagree? And so if you agree, do you agree absolutely in all cases? Do you have certain examples where you do agree, but then others where you don't? Right? So that's what you want to look at. What about what he says about good and bad? Do we feel like good and bad are absolutes for the most part? Like good and evil? Like, so, right. But then the definition of good maybe has a little less to do with self and more to do with community or others or society as a whole, right? But the definition is interesting. What about chance and fortune? Do you feel like we can control chance through hard work and strong will? Like, do you ever have people who are like, I just have really bad luck? Like they are in a bad situation after bad situation after bad situation. And when you look objectively, you're like, well, let's talk about the decisions that you made, right? That maybe their decisions had a lot more to do with their luck or their situation in life. So you could absolutely argue that that's something that you would agree with. But then again, look at it in a bigger picture based on maybe some of the, not just what we have, but like that blurb on page 215 about Ralph Waldo Emerson, as well as the introduction for section 8, where it talks about transcendentalism. Okay, so the writing assignment, again, your answers are not right or wrong. I'm not looking for you to regurgitate everything you've ever been taught, particularly those who have received a Christian education, right? I mean, absolutely, if your beliefs fall under what we believe as Christians about good and bad and divinity and man's inherent nature, like that, I would hope that that's foundational. Certainly not going to like give your paper to the principal if it's not, kind of thing, you know. But the important thing about this is I want you to be able to defend your opinion, because we're very easy to dissuade on something when we can't defend what we do believe. So the very first page gives you what I'm looking for. You need to have a clear opinion on that addresses the question. So your thesis needs to be, in my opinion, I agree with the philosophies of Emerson only in certain situations, or I completely disagree with all philosophies of Emerson, particularly around his definition of good and bad and his definition of a nonconformist, or the importance of being nonconformist, whatever. You know, so your thesis needs to have 2 or 3 main ideas you're going to talk about. But these questions should guide, like pick 2 or 3 from this list of what we've talked about: believing in oneself, being a nonconformist, the definition of good and bad, man's control over chance and fortune, and how we bring peace. Okay, so that's the writing assignment. Tomorrow, I want you to come to class with a thesis statement. So pick what you want your main reasons to be and kind of what that, we'll get the thesis statement hammered out in class tomorrow. Okay, thank you.